Today I get to work on a 2003 E350 van, two-wheel drive, full ton. He's got a rotor that's way warped. It's like 14 thousandths warped, so he gets a really bad shake when he hits the brakes. His calipers are old and crusty, and I'm going to show you how to replace rotors, pack bearings, do a brake job, stuff. I don't think I'm missing anything here. The tools you're going to need some wheel bearing grease, 3/8 inch ratchet, 21 millimeter for the caliper. You're going to need like a T45 Torx for the caliper, 7/8 or a 22 millimeter for the lug nuts, 9/16 for the brake line, impact if you got one, vice grip. This is like 1 1/16. You're going to need that for your wheel bearing nut, side cutters, a chisel or a regular screwdriver, and a hammer. That should be all the stuff you need for this job. First thing I'm going to do is deal with this brake line. I got to pinch it off. Get this ABS wire out of my way. Okay, now that I got that pinched off, I can take off this brake line. Only reason why I'm doing this is because I'm replacing the caliper. 9/16 on this banjo bolt. And these T45 Torxes are on. There's 2 of those. I'm going to pull this caliper in as best as I can to get this brake fluid out of here. 21 on these caliper support brackets. There's 2 of those. You just take a chisel and a hammer. This one's got a lip on the outside of the cup, so I can use that. If not, you got to go on the inside and you just got to work this out. But with these, you just get it right here and they pop right out, just like that. You're going to want a lot of rags too. You're going to use a lot of them, trust me. You got a cotter pin in here you got to get out. Take off this nut and your 1 1/16 socket. That's actually super loose. I'm putting everything in this cup too. You want a clean container for all of this. I just use the cup. There's a washer. You got a wheel bearing and a washer. And your rotor just falls right out. You wipe all this out with a clean rag. Now I got the rotor right here with the inner seal. If you want to take this out, what you do, see how shitty that rotor is? It's really not good. So what I do, I'll put a towel down like this, and then I'll put the rotor over it. Piece of rust just dropped on it. Put the rotor over it so it's nice and clean. And then I'll take my chisel and I'll put it right on the inner bearing. Right on the inner race. Don't put it on the cage, just the inner race. I'll show you what that is in a second. You just tap down on it like that. So you got a whole bunch of rust here, but where the bearing fell, it'll be nice and clean. That's how you can save your seal. You can actually reuse this if you want. You can get your bearing out to clean it. I'm putting brand new bearings in it though, so I'm not going to clean these. And when you do, you can use diesel fuel or brake cleaner or kerosene, which is actually number 2 diesel. Get all the grease out of here. Blow it out. Do whatever you got to do to get these clean to repack them. I'm not going to though, so I'm going to buy a new seal too, so I'm not going to clean that either. So I'm not going to show you how to clean these. It's junk. I'm throwing it away. If you see anything in here that's Brenel too, you can't use it. What Brenel is there'll be little pits in the bearing. There'll be pits in the race or flat spots. Sometimes, once in a very great while, you'll see flat spots on the bearings, and that's because they're not turning. You usually know ahead of time though before you take them out, because if they're Brenel, they're going to make noise. They're going to growl like crazy. These actually do look really good, but I'm putting all brand new stuff on here just for peace of mind. I got some emery cloth. I think this is a 150 grit. You should use about 220. I don't have any, so 150 is going to work for me. That should be good enough. Won't need to get too carried away. Yeah, looks good to me. Okay, now I got brand new rotors. If you get yours turned or whatever, you can clean all this out and maybe put new races and bearings in them. These rotors come with races, and I bought new bearings, and the new bearings come with races. Oh no, wow, these don't come with races. Good, I didn't have to pay extra for them. Oh, one's got a race and one doesn't. What the heck, that's kind of strange. But yeah, some people might think you need to take this race out and put that race in, but you don't. This race that's in the rotor is going to be just fine. That's why they put it in there. It's going to work great. Yeah, like I say, you want to look for anything that might be Brenel. If you're keeping the bearings, there'll be flat spots, or Brenel, meaning it's all pitted up. And if it is, you should just replace them. They're not that expensive. But yeah, what I do with this, I always like to just use a grease gun with bearing grease. I don't like to use a tub because it's just less messier to just do it this way. You can leave the inside of this dry if you want, but I don't, just because moisture, condensation, any reason I can think of. What I do though, I just do a little bit. I put a little bit of grease in here, and all I do is I just kind of smooth it out, and I make the grease kind of just enough to cover the metal and kind of be square with the race a little bit. So yeah, I don't put a lot in here. Some people don't put any in here. Some people gob it in, and you really don't need to put a lot in here, because you pack the bearing, and once the bearing's packed, that's all the grease you're really going to need. But like I say, I just like to do it that way. I don't put a lot in there, just a little bit. Like I say, just so it's square with the inner race. You know, it's fine. And then you always want to like rub your hands. You can use rubber gloves if you want, or just regular hands, but you want to make sure there's no grit. You shouldn't feel any grit on anything when you're doing this job. If you're packing bearings and playing with grease, you feel any grit, you need to wipe that out and actually clean anything. If you need to, if you drop something on the floor or whatever, and it's all gritty and nasty, you got to start all over, because any little bit of stuff can make your bearings Brenel. Now, to pack a bearing, I pumped a bunch in the palm of my hand, and you just sit here and you push it through until you get grease come through the bearing. It's got to come all the way through. You go all the way around and do that. That's how you pack a bearing. People have been doing it this way since time began. The time of bearing began. And that's it, it's packed. And I just fudge some in around here. Like that. So the whole bearing inside and out is all coated. And that's really all the grease you need for this job. stick it in the hole. Yeah, on the seal, you really don't need a lot of grease on here. You can just put a light coat of grease on it. Don't need to get all carried away with that either. I got a brass drift here just because I got a brass drift. This is what you want to use for races too, to get them out and put them in. Well, to put them in anyways. You don't have to much worry about taking them out, but put them in, you don't want to damage them. And brass is really soft, so it's a good thing to use. If you use anything else, man, you just got to be careful. Soft metal, whatever. There's bearing installers too, like these. Here's seal bearing installers. You can install races with these if you want. If you need to, if you're going to save your rotors and put bearings and races in them. So there, that's how you pack a bearing. I'm going to pack the front one and toss this on. Sometimes these go on a little funny, but as soon as you put the inner bearing on, or the outer bearing on, it usually falls right in. Just like that. And if anything's questionable, if you think you got grease or grit or grime in here, and you turn it, you can usually feel it and hear it. It's nice and smooth. Now, for setting up your wheel bearing, what you want to do, assuming you don't have any bad ball joints, is you want to shake the tire top to bottom. You'll feel a little play in there. You want to tighten it and spin it. You want to seat this bearing. You'll notice when you turn it that it'll kind of get a little bit loose. And just keep tightening it up more and more and more and more. You basically want to get about 20-30 foot-pounds of torque on it. You're pushing all the grease out of it too, all the excess grease. Yeah, I probably got roughly 30 pounds of pressure on here, and it's not getting any tighter. So right now the bearing's seated. It's too tight. It pushed all the grease out, and I know it's going to be in as far as it goes. You want to loosen it up about a quarter turn until there's a little bit of play when you shake the tire. I can feel a little bit of play. I'll just tighten it up a little more. I still got a little play. Tighten it up a little more. Play's gone. You don't want to get too carried away. You don't want it really tight. Right there, that's perfect. So I want to put this on here. This castle nut, there's a lot of different ways you can put it, and you want to put it on in such a way that you know it's not gonna go counterclockwise on you and loosen up. So like there's just a little bit of this tooth going over the hole. So I know it's not gonna go this way, and that's where you want it. Uh-oh. It's still a little loose. Oh crap. Yeah, and since it's all brand new stuff, it might loosen up a little bit in time, but all you got to do is just jack up the front end and shake the tire like I did. You know, just shake the tire and make sure it's not loose, and if it is, you don't have to take the tire off or anything. You just take this cap off, pull the cotter pin, and just turn it just a little bit to tighten it up. After about, I don't know, 100, 500 miles. Usually they stay pretty good though. Yeah, these slides, they were dry, so I had to take the pins out. You use dielectric grease or clear silicone paste, it's the same thing. Don't put disc brake quiet in there. That's what this junk is. There's a groove down on the bottom that's got to go first. Like this. Put these pins in. Like that. I recommend putting these bolts in. These bolts, put them in by hand and torque them to whatever somebody tells you to. I don't, because I've done this for way too long. So don't do what I do unless you feel like breaking stuff or you really know what you're doing. Those will snap. You want to make sure this surface isn't all screwed up. Sometimes the people that remanufacture these drop them on stuff and then they're a mess. Copper crush washer. Copper crush washer. These you just gotta kind of do by feel. You'll feel them crush and crush and crush, and then it doesn't want to crush. And then I just go a little more, and it should not leak. Remove vice grip. It's a 3/8. 3/8 brake bleeder tool. I haven't used that in forever. Now I want to pump the brakes up so it's got pressure, and that'll push all the rest of the air that's in here up. Okay, I stomped on the pedal about 10-15 times and held it down real hard for about 20-30 seconds. My finger's not wet, it's nice and dry, so it's not leaking at all, which is good. Hit the pedal real hard 10 times again, and there's almost nothing coming out of there. I'm going to do it one more time just because I'm really picky. Unload this caliper a hair. Bump the pedal 10 more times. Nothing coming out of there but fluid. Okay, it's all out finally. It'd be easier if I had a helper, but I'm doing this by myself, so that's how I do it. Okay, that's it. Done. Bam.